Well, it is 3 minutes past 6:30. It's time for us to start. I'm going to start with a brief introduction of Steve Murphree, who really doesn't need much introduction. Steve is excuse me, it's allergies, folks. I'm not sick. Steve is a professor of biology at Belmont University, has been there many years. He's been tapped into his expertise on insects, has been tapped by the Tennessee Naturalist Program numerous times. He does a lot of the insect presentations with that group. He's written many articles with conservation, the Tennessee Conservationist. And that plug that you put in, well, if anybody wants one of those nice containers, they should write an article. We've got a lot of authors here in the group that may or may not have sent anything in yet. So I'd like to encourage everyone. And yes, okay. So welcome, Steve. He's going to be speaking tonight on the emergence of the cicadas, which there's been a bit of talk about it. And he's also had an article that came out in this month's Conservationist on the same topic. It's excellent. It's really good information. So if you missed something tonight and you want to go back and check, you can either go to the recording that we're doing, or you can also check the article in Tennessee Conservationist. Both will be available for you. So without any further ado, I'm going to say welcome, Steve, and give you the floor.
Okay, thank you very much,
So
Kim.
if you go ahead and share your screen.
I will. Okay. Well, we are about to witness something. Some of you have seen it before. I've seen it a few times. In fact, I was born in a cicada year, 1959, for this brood 19 of the periodical cicadas. I was born in August, so I didn't experience the sound, but my mother did before I was born, I'm sure. So I'm sort of synchronized with this brood. I'm not going to go as far as Mark Twain did when he said he was synchronized with the appearance of Halley's Comet and that he expected to go out the next time it came. So I'm not going to go anywhere near that tonight. So
Thank you. We'd like to keep you around.
that's exactly right. Yeah. Let's see here. I wanted to give you sort of an outline of some things here. I'm going to try to use presenter view a little bit too. This is what I hope to cover. We'll talk about cicadas in general. There are right at 3,400 species in the world. We're used to a couple different body forms of these insects, the dog-day cicadas, and then the periodical cicadas. And a lot of people get the dog-day cicadas mixed up with the periodical cicadas. And but remember, the periodicals are the ones that will emerge in May, and the dog-day cicadas don't make their appearance every year until generally July, late June, early July, that we'd see those. So those are the dog-day cicadas. They are sometimes called annual cicadas, but they actually don't have a 1 year cycle. They have 2 to 5 year cycles, and they overlap so much, those broods do, that we see them every year. So we'll talk about some historical aspects of the periodical cicadas. There are both 13 and 17-year broods of those. And then we'll talk about the emergences of the periodical cicadas here in Tennessee, the imminent one coming up in early May, and then another one that actually will occur in 2025. We'll look at the life cycle of these cicadas. We'll talk about some aspects of why we see so many in urban, suburban areas. And also, everybody should be familiar with habitat fragmentation and loss of trees and Of course, here in Davidson County, we're lucky to have an old growth forest, if only 300 or 400 acres of it out near the Warner Parks, the Hill Forest. But most people have not seen that. And the cicadas, of course, were here um, when everything was old growth in Eastern North America. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about when a cicada emergence, of course, they're native species, but when they occur, they kind of disrupt things because the predators are not used to them. They're naive. There's only one species that's really synchronized with their life cycle, and it's a fungus. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about some resources that are out there that are available to you in case you're interested. Okay, so this is the classification of cicadas. Cicadas used to be classified along with tree hoppers and aphids and such in the order Homoptera, but in entomology, like so many areas of zoology, there has been some lumping and splitting going on. So I can say there's about 30 orders of insects, but tomorrow there might be 32 or 28. The taxonomists mostly based on molecular DNA work, have done some things. So what they have done is brought the cicadas and their kin into the order Hemiptera, which has the stink bugs and a variety of other things you'll be familiar with. So they're in the family Cicadidae, the subfamily, and then the genus name for the dog-day cicadas used to be Tivicin, but now it's Neotivicin, the new Tivicin. And then, of course, I've always liked the genus name of the periodical cicadas because of the mystery about it, the Magus cicada. Of course, it was Linnaeus himself that came up with the two-part scientific names. We call that binomial nomenclature. Over in Sweden a long time ago, in about the time we had our Revolutionary War, he was naming this cicada. They weren't even really calling them cicadas back then, by the way. They were calling them locusts, and we'll get into that. I have to throw in a little bit about the metamorphosis of cicadas. They have an incomplete metamorphosis. The technical name for that for terrestrial life cycles is parometabolous. So we have eggs that hatch and the nymphal stages emerge. And of course, the periodical cicadas go through this extremely slowly underground, hidden from us. In other words, they're not going to invade us unless you can say, only you think about the word invasion, they're coming from somewhere else outside of our county or whatever, or state. But these are right here with us now. They've been here for 13 years and they're in their nymphal stages. The last one before they emerge is the fourth nymphal stage. We call these instars. And so dog-day cicadas and periodical cicadas are both native to Eastern North America. And of course, the periodicals especially appear in such great numbers. A lot of people consider them to be pests because of that. They can't bite you. They can't hurt you in any way. And for the most part, they can't damage our trees and shrubs while they're here for a short period of time, emerging, finding mates, laying eggs, and then dying. So anyway, they're native, and I know we think about non-native species uh, occurring in tremendous numbers. And this, of course, is true because they have no natural parasites predators. But these periodical cicadas are native, and their strategy, that's a very effective one, is to fill the bellies of all the potential predators, and then there's still millions of them left to reproduce for the next generation. Okay, I have some cool photographs, just a couple here of cicadas from other parts of the world. These almost don't look real, do they? They look like they were painted or whatever, but some cicada species are very large. Some are very differently patterned than the ones that we're used to here in Tennessee. And I'm going to go out of this presenter mode so that we can go and listen to some cicadas from around the world just briefly here. So let's pretend we're down in Australia and listen to this one for a few seconds. Hopefully everybody can hear that okay. We tested this before. Okay, let's go to the Philippines now and listen to this one. It's a very distinctive one, isn't it? Not anything like we've got around here. And this one's from down south here in Argentina. And I think you'll agree, it does kind of sound like a locomotive. So they're pretty different, aren't they? In the way that they communicate. Of course, in the cicadas, most of you already probably know this, it's the males that make the noise, the females are silent, and the females seek out the males of their species. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next slide. This is one of our common cicadas. I'm just going to show 3 of these. We have more of these big dog day cicadas in Tennessee. And I'm going to play this one for you, the morning cicada. I'm sure many of you have heard that one. Usually in July or August. Okay, here is one called the lyric cicada. And it's not a great photograph of it, but let's listen to it. Of course, you can hear these in other states besides Tennessee. I'm almost sure this is one that was very loud down at Dauphin Island, Alabama, when we vacationed down there last year. Okay, and then this is one of my favorites that's around here, and I imagine you've heard it before too, the scissor grinder. So you can see how someone thought it sounded like scissors grinding on something, perhaps. Okay, now this is kind of a stage photograph here of one of those dog day cicadas, and then a rather large wasp. It doesn't look like it's kin to mud daubers or dirt daubers, but it's in the same family. It's called the cicada killer. And we see a lot of these when I do my insect day camps in July here at Belmont. There's one place in particular, one courtyard. There must be 50 of them flying around at once. And they look like hornets, but they're not aggressive towards us. And the children just love to catch them. So they can seek out a male or female cicada. They'll sting and paralyze it. And then they'll fly very laboriously with it to a hole that they've pre-dug, stuff the cicada still alive but paralyzed down in it, and lay an egg. And so this is quite a phenomenon. Of course, the larvae will feed on the cicada still alive from the inside, and then that's where it gets its nourishment. So again, the annual cicadas have predators like this and parasites. The periodical cicadas have managed to evade that with their extremely long teenager-like life cycle. Okay, so we have this brood emerging. These are some of the articles I've written over the years for the conservationist about periodical cicadas. We have one in West Tennessee that will emerge, another 13-year brood. There's only 3 13-year broods out there. There's mostly 17-year broods that, by and large, even though some can occur and emerge in Tennessee, mostly they are a little bit further northeast of us. Over to the right, you can see this sort of ghostly appearance of a freshly emerged adult. We call these teneral adults. It doesn't take very long for them to pump up their wings, and then they start to harden, and they get a black appearance with red eyes, and then the wings with the red veins. All right, I wanted you to see that we actually have 4 species that will emerge in this brood, but there's two of them that are hard to tell apart, but because you have to listen to their call. But there's this big, large cicada here. It's called Magicicada tridecim. If it's a 17-year brood, they call them Magicicada septemdecim. So you have to know your Latin there for that, but 17 or 13. So this is the biggest one. And if you find these or find one dead and turn it over and you look, of course, this is the biggest of the three that might emerge. Right here in Nashville, we won't see many of these, but you get out in more rural areas, you will see and definitely hear this, but it has a very distinctive call. And notice that the underside of its abdomen here, we call these the abdominal sternites, they have a certain color pattern. They have an orange tinge to them. The one in the middle is Tridecassini, and this has the one that sounds, I guess you could say it sounds the most like our dog day cicadas. And these are all males, by the way. You can tell by the shape of the tip of their abdomen. More about that in a minute. And then the smallest one of all, and it's called Tridecula. It has orange on its abdominal sternites, but not near as extensive as you see in the big species over here. So this is the most diminutive or smallest of the three that you might see or hear. Okay. And I'm going to go to get out of this view here and go to the next slide. And we can listen to these three. So I'll play Tridecassini first, since it's the one that most people will begin to hear first. These are the ones that some of the specialists who work on these species, and I'm certainly not a specialist, I'm more of a medical veterinary entomologist, but I've kept up with them a lot and rubbed shoulders with these people who are specialists over the years. I'll show you a photograph of one of them coming up. Anyway, this is the one that some of them, they say this one sort of sacrifices itself, so the other species or more of this species can come along and mate. They're very slow flying and easy for predators to catch. You may have heard some of these calling last year. We had some early emergers that missed the party by 1 year. We'll talk about those. Now, Tridecula, get your ears ready for this, because this will sound a lot like a lawn sprinkler when your lawn's too dry and your water. It's a little bit quieter than the others, but you get the idea. Now, Tridecula, I'm sorry, Tridecim, the biggest of the three, this one here, has the most distinctive call. I feel like some of you will remember that from 2011 or 1998. Some people say it sounds like they're saying the Egyptian pharaoh, like that. So it's very distinctive. You get a lot of those calling out in the woods. People have likened it to an alien spacecraft has landed, making that unusual sound or whatever that's out there in the woods. Okay, let's look at the mating call, and you can see the male use his abdomen here, moving around. By the way, if you're going to eat cicadas, the males aren't very nutritious. Their abdomen is mostly hollow. We may talk more about preying on them ourselves coming up. Notice that is septemdecim, so that's the 17-year one. Looks exactly like our tridecim does. Okay, so let's talk about male and female. This is the female. Notice you saw some abdomens of males a while ago. The female has a much more pointed instead of rounded abdomen. Her egg layer, we call this an ovipositor, is retracted in there. I'll show you a picture of one later when it's extended, and it's serrated. They use it to cut little slits in new growth tree branches, and that's where they lay their eggs. Okay, let's move on to male. And again, you saw male before. Males, besides having that rounded mating organ down here, they also, if you pull one of the wings up, you can see their timbal organ. And this is what makes all the racket, what makes all the noise. They vibrate those at very high speed and produces their distinctive calls. Now, when there's a chorusing center, typically there's more than one species there. All three are there, but the females can home in on the male of their species, even though to us it's just a cacophony of sound. Okay, a little bit about the folklore, the insects of history, we call these things. They were first seen by Europeans in 1633, just 13 years after the Pilgrims got to Plymouth Rock and settled that settlement. They refer to them as locusts. Some people disagree about this. Some think because it's the biblical locust that we read about in the Old Testament. Others say that the locusts were the part of the food, locusts and honey, right, that John the Baptist consumed in the New Testament. There was a scientist who first used the word cicada in 1756. That's about the same time that Linnaeus, I think, named the genus. And something of note here, we'll come back to Thomas Jefferson in a minute because of this double emergence that will occur in Illinois. But Jefferson, of course, was pretty good at natural history. He tried to stay in touch as much as he could with Lewis and Clark when they went out west and disappeared for years. And but he was incorrect in his writing about, he wrote that the female sings. Of course, we know the female is silent in the cicadas. The male is the one with the call. Another thing that out there that you may have heard before, you can see very clearly a W on the wings of these insects. In the 1750s or so, the colonists and all thought, this is pre-Revolutionary War, thought that a war, either an Indian war or another war would begin. And of course, yes, there were a lot of wars predicted and took place from 1750 on until the independence of our country, right? The cicadas don't have any P there to indicate peace, though, do they? Just war. All right. There is some information from local newspapers. It's kind of fun. I did this several years ago now. Went to the library and did some study of microfilm, microfiche from Nashville newspapers. This first notice is actually from a friend who wrote in the local Shelbyville Times-Gazette, a column called Scraps of Poplin for many years. And they recorded a freeze on May 20th. That would have been prime time for brood 19 to be out and singing and mating. And they said that they all were frozen on the ground. They didn't see any of them left. So it's a wonder that some of them even reproduced that year. They had to use corn scoops. There were so many on the ground to pick them up. Of course, 1946, locust hordes swarm over the state. 59, voice of the locust heard again. So notice the use of the word locust a lot. And you'll have trouble convincing people that they're actually more correctly called cicadas instead of locust. And again, all the way through 98, and there are others of these. I just picked a few. There are publications from the United States Department of Agriculture. I have just a couple of these. I really like this one over here. Somebody gave this to me when I was at Auburn University, which used to be called Alabama Polytechnic Institute, when I was leaving there. So this is way back in 1919. And again, they still had a pretty good distribution map. You'll see that there was an individual named Marlott that came up with a scheme of numbering the broods of periodical cicadas in Eastern North America, Eastern US. And that has worked pretty well over the years to indicate where those broods typically are. Okay, and we have fun with this from time to time. This was an event. I was a new faculty member. I'd been here at Belmont for about 7 years, and today, I don't know if you could get the president of Belmont University to wear a cicada suit and participate in a parade and all sorts of things, but we just had a good time. My wife and I made this suit. This is me modeling it, and we even enlarged the wings and made these things to look like periodical cicada wings. So we had a lot of fun with it, and had a big event there. And of course, I had warned them that was back when we had outdoor commencement ceremonies, and sure enough, they were flying shoulder level and landing on the graduates' caps and gowns, but they weren't calling yet in '98. They were calling a week later when Vanderbilt had its commencement, and apparently they were attracted to the loudspeakers and everything else. So we were lucky that we got by okay that year. Some of you will know now all of our commencements are indoors. All right, so there are various uh, internet things that trend these days, or we call these things memes. So you can see one. This almost looks like a hat show print. It may not be from 2011, the cicada invasion. And then this is one that Joanna Brachetto shared with me. You've seen this keep calm, carry on from the Queen of England before. So it's interesting when these show up. And there has been some misinformation out there this year because people got the word out quickly about this double emergence, and everybody thought it was all over Eastern North America. But as we'll see, it's only in a few wooded areas of central Illinois that you can go and experience those. And of course, we're about to go see some people may drive up to see the total solar eclipse, but I would almost drive up to Illinois in about June and see the double emergence. Okay, so this is a nice map that shows where all the broods are. And again, as I said, there are only 3 that are 13-year synchronized. There are the 17-year broods here, and you can see their distribution. That light blue color indicates the great southern brood that we're about to experience. And notice it's up here a little further north than you think. It's in Missouri and parts of Illinois too, and that's where that overlap will take place. But there are others. This one in dark green here is the other one that we'll see out west in Memphis and basically west of the Tennessee River again, coming up in a few more years. I think it's 4 more years for that. So these have been mapped out pretty well, and the people who are specialists on these, they can go pretty much anywhere in North America any year and see an emergence somewhere if it's Eastern North America. Okay, this is that overlap I was mentioning in Illinois, where we'll see that taking place of the 17-year brood here. Again, the 13-year broods have higher numbers, and of course they've always used Roman numerals than the 17-year broods. Okay. So the broods that we would see that are 13-year broods are brood 19 that we'll see coming up, and then this brood 23 will occur in 4 more years. And I am remiss here because that should say West Tennessee right there. That's the West Tennessee brood. I'm mistaken about that. I'll have to correct that. But anyway, the 17-year broods, we get some of brood 10, but it'll be a while before we see that one. But the one we should look for, and we may have some early emergers. I call them accelerants. Some people just refer to them as stragglers, even if they come early. And that would be brood 14, and they will emerge in East Tennessee, but also counties around here too. We'll see some of those. So maybe we'll see a few more, because these may emerge 1 year early. A few of them will, along with our great southern brood up here, 19. Okay, I've got a clip here that's from the BBC, and you'll notice David Attenborough's voice, and you'll call them cicadas, but I think it's worth watching in terms of the excellent cinematography here.
After 17 years underground, creatures are stirring. The nymphs of the periodical cicada have been biding their time. Now they march like zombies towards the nearest tree and start to climb. At first, there are merely thousands, but soon more than 1 billion swarm all over the forest. The biggest insect emergence on the planet is underway.
They don't move that quickly up tree trunks.
They invade the upper branches where they climb out of their external skeletons and assume their adult winged form. At first, they're white and soft, but they have until dawn to complete their transformation. After an absence of 17 years, the forest is now overrun by cicadas.
We'll appreciate seeing some of the wildlife easily
The
feeding on
adults are clumsy and very edible. For turtles and other inhabitants of the forest, this is a feast they're lucky to see once in their lifetime, and they gorge themselves while they can. Times have never been so good. The cicadas have no defenses and virtually offer themselves to their attackers. The stream of insects is so relentless that soon all the predators are full to the point of bursting. And still the cicadas come. With the predators overwhelmed, the survivors can achieve their purpose.
I'll go ahead and stop that there. You'll get to see a little of the courtship and such coming up here as well from these. Okay, have you ever seen a photograph like this before? That is a copperhead. And of course, I'm going to invite you to go out with your families and at night with flashlights and look around trees when these cicada nymphs are coming up to emerge. And but I guess in some areas, I'm told that copperheads will feed on these like anything else would. And your domestic animals, your dogs, will just probably eat too many of these things too. This is not a periodical cicada. This is one of the dog day cicadas. Okay, this is a wonderful painting that I came across. I have one of these I put up in my insect day camps to show the life cycle. So we're going to talk about this a bit more coming up. But I just like the way that this person included, of course, the root system of this tree underneath, where all these cicada nymphs have been for these long 13 years and about to emerge. Of course, this one is based on the 17-year life cycle, but it could be 13 as well. So here's what the life cycle looks like. The eggs are tiny. I have some of these preserved from 2011. I have a few nymphs also that emerged. This is the first out of the egg nymphs. This doesn't show it very well, but even at that very small stage, they have tiny red eyes. And most of these will not make it. They'll float down to the ground and bury themselves, but some of them, only small percentage, maybe 2 to 4%, will make it all 13 years underground. There are a few predators underground, like moles, that feed on them, right? These are nymphs of other stages here. Here's the fourth instar in the lower left, and of course that newly emerged or teneral adult, and then an adult later that's in the process of finding mates and producing offspring. Let's go through kind of a calendar. This is what I included in my Tennessee Conservationist article. I do have a soil thermometer, and of course I've had it for 13 years, and I've got to go buy a new battery for it. And so it'll measure down to about 6 inches. Ideally, if you could measure down to 8 inches in areas where you have trees, and some shade, some not. And I'm going to start taking temperatures coming up next month to see when we get closest to 64 degrees Fahrenheit at 8 inches down, 6 to 8 inches down. That's when you should begin to see emergence, or nearly ready for that to take place. Okay, so especially after a rain has softened the soil some, they'll start coming up in early May to mid-May, and it'll take them about 10 to sometimes 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks to emerge. And then at first they'll fly shoulder high, and then the males will start, after their timbal organs harden up, they'll start calling in earnest. In these chorus centers, they'll go to the loudest place. Sometimes that's where humans have a lot of noise, a tractor that's running, for example. As you'll see in a minute, if you want to attract them and to yourself, you can start up a chainsaw and rev it up really good near a chorusing center, and they'll all come and land on you if you want them to. And so this is, as we get into mid to late May, it's really loud. You can't escape this. People who have outdoor events may want to reschedule just to avoid the noise. There are people who have a phobia about insects that I sometimes they'll get in touch with me, and they will want to know when the cicadas emerge, because they've made plans to go live west of the Mississippi River for about a month or two and then come back to Tennessee. So they want to avoid them completely. All right, so if you want to protect any of your younger growth trees, generally the native trees do okay, but if you have some young saplings and such, you could cover them just about the time that they begin to emerge with cheesecloth in advance, so that the females can't lay eggs in the new growth of their branches. As we move into June, then the females continue to lay eggs. Cicadas are going to end up dying before the end of June. And there's usually, if there's a lot in your area, there'll be a strong odor of decay. Of course, this is natural fertilizer for the trees and other plants. And then as we get into the summer, if there's any windstorms, sometimes the branches of the trees that have had eggs laid in them will crack and hang down and turn brown. We call this flagging. I'll show you a picture of that. That is sort of a natural pruning, and people at the lawn and garden centers here in Nashville will tell you those native trees, it looks bad, but they're not going to be damaged necessarily by that. So of course, in mid-July to late July, usually sometime after July the 4th, you'll see the tiny first instar nymphs hatch out and float down. You have to really be looking for them. And what you can do if you want to is you can basically along about after the 4th of July, go find a branch that has had eggs in it, and then cut that off, and then suspend it over a pan that has water in it, and then look at it every day. And at a certain point, all those little nymphs will hatch out, and they'll be stuck in the surface tension of the water if you want to see what they look like. I'll show you some coming up in a minute. Again, they don't survive very well. Only 2% of them will survive. So a way to sum up the life cycle is like this. This is not original to me, but I kind of like it. Hatch, suck tree roots, emerge, court, mate, die, repeat. That's how the life cycle of these insects works. And notice that they feed on xylem fluids, fluids that are being absorbed from the soil by the tree roots, not phloem coming from up in the tree. So I had to double check that. I had to go back and double check that it is xylem feeding and not phloem feeding that they do those 13 years underground. Okay, so here's what fourth instar limbs look like, either of 13th or 17-year cicadas. You can see their wing pads. So this is the stage that they're in right now, and will start to emerge as we get into early May. This is the teneral adults emerging. Here's a nice drawing of this over here. And again, you can plan to take your family out and look for these as they first begin to emerge. I don't know how well you can see it here, but I've got a little UV flashlight that I use to look for scorpions and such. And so I'm going to try it because you can see here's a nice photograph of UV. They might actually glow or biofluoresce when you hit them with UV light. Okay. This is showing the shells that they leave of their nymphal exoskeleton. These little white stringy things are the former breathing tubes that all insects have, called trachea. These adults have them too. They're inside their body. And more teneral adults. This is a stage if you're wanting to collect some cicadas when they're up on the trees and before they harden up, mostly at night. You would collect these and freeze them, and you can use them in recipes. So there's a link to recipes. I think I've got it at the end of this presentation, certainly in the Tennessee Conservationist article. And I think I'm going to try a couple of these recipes this time. I haven't told my wife yet, but I think I'm going to try them. Okay. They say if you eat one of these raw, and again, I'm getting kind of old, I may have to try one raw this time too, that it kind of tastes like avocado, some would say. So I may have to experience that too. All right, so when you see the tremendous emergence like this and them crawling up the tree trunks, you can't see it very well, but there are a lot of them that have deformed wings. And we think this is because of crowding, or perhaps in urban areas, the use of lawn chemicals may have some effect on this. So these are not going to be able to mate very likely. They're not going to be able to fly. They're just going to crawl up the tree, and if their wings crinkle up, they're not going to be in good shape. All right, so this is, of course, mating follows courtship, and I want you to get an opportunity to see what courtship is going to look like here, because the females do make a sound. I've said they're silent, but they do make a sound that sounds something like if you snap your fingers, and there's a reason for that. And so here's a quote. This is not mine. This is a first century Greek philosopher. Happy are cicadas, for they all have silent wives. What do you think about that? And of course, a chorusing center can be about as loud as a lawnmower that you've revved up, or a tractor, diesel tractor running up to 100 decibels. It's not going to make you deaf, but it's very noticeable. It's measurable. And so, of course, a chorusing center is where these males will all aggregate. They'll fly there so that more females will enter it and find them, and then they will finish their courtship and mate following that. Okay, here's my friend, Dr. Kritsky. He's the real cicada expert from this area. He's just retired from the College of Mount St. Joseph in Cincinnati, Ohio. He, in order to get this photograph, he had some loud device, maybe a chainsaw, running near him so that all these males would come and land on him. And again, they're not going to harm you in any way. If you set up a memorable photograph like this in an area where there are a lot of cicadas, let's say in late May to June. Okay, let's look at this finger snap situation here, just briefly. A sound the females will make.
These cicadas in the eastern United States spend 17 whole years below ground, sucking sap from tree roots, and then, within a few days, a whole population emerges.
In fact, I think I'm just going to advance this a little bit till we get to what I'm hoping we'll see here.
17 years of living underground, the cicadas are now approaching the climax of their lives. And for the males, that means this. The call is his way of attracting a female. The females reply with a quite different sound. A click made by flicking her wings. So that's what the males are listening out for. I can imitate the female's wing flip with a snap of my fingers, and that causes them to follow me anywhere because they're so determined to find a female. Now, can I bring you back? How about coming this way?
Yeah, I'll stop that there. So you can get a feel for that. Maybe try that yourself. I've never been very good at snapping fingers, but maybe you are, and you can try that. By the way, if you see cicadas like this, I have a good friend here at Belmont who went out to see this in, I think, 2011. He worked at the library, and he said a squirrel ran up the tree as soon as he went out there, and the cicadas all sprayed him with their excrement. So they do suck fluids from the trees, and they do that because they get dehydrated, and they will spray you pretty good if a squirrel or something runs up a tree, or your dog flushes them like that. So just be prepared for that in case it happens. All right, so this is showing what flagging looks like in a tree. This looks pretty bad, but it's really not. In a young tree like this in a cemetery, I think it is. And so let's look at what the damage looks like in some of this new growth. This looks to be our state tree, right? The tulip poplar, yellow poplar. And you can see where a female has laid eggs there. And these may have been further along where they have already hatched at that point. And you can see what the eggs look like laid in there, if this has been dissected away. And then this is what the ovipositor looks like once it's been extended out of the this abdomen of the female. So you can see it's kind of serrated, and they use this to saw their way in to lay the eggs. And this is kind of cool. I think Dr. Kritsky photographed these. This is what those first instar nymphs look like if you let some of them fall into a container off of a branch long about mid-July. You might see this happen. So they're trying to float their way down to the ground and bury themselves for 13 years. All right, I did say there's one species that is synchronized with Magicicada, and it's Massospora cicadana. This one actually hijacks the sexual signals of periodical cicadas. What it does, when these males get infected, and you may even see their abdomen fall off, and there's the fungal spores right there. They will basically, an infected male will make the wing snap sounds that a female makes. Very uncharacteristic. They won't call like a male. They'll make those snap sounds. So it's like mind control of the males. And so what happens is other males come to them and try to mate with them. And so the spores get transferred that way. And so basically this fungus is hijacking the sexual reproduction of the cicadas in order to reproduce itself over time. And they go down, the spores go down with the nymphs underground for 13 years, and they come back up infected, you see. All right, so this is the numbering system. I'll go rather quickly through this. You see the Marlott was the one who devised this. There are 12 17-year broods. They have lower numbers, and then only the 3 13-year broods. Here's our brood 19 we're about to experience. This brood 23 is the one that will occur in West Tennessee in 4 years. Okay. And so there are stragglers. And again, I prefer to call the ones that come out a year early accelerants, and then the ones that will miss the party and come out the next year decelerants, but they're generally just referred to as stragglers. And they don't really amount to much in terms of reproduction. There is some concern about tree loss, and if you have a tree that dies, and I would think if the tree's cut down at year 12, we did some asking about this, then as you know, the roots underground and the tree stump will live on for a while longer, and that brood will still emerge the next year. But if you remove trees, clear cut or whatever, clearly the nymphs underground are not going to survive that long underground phase that they have. And that kind of brings us to this question: why do we see so many of these periodical cicadas show up in urban areas like Nashville and in the suburbs and such? And many people feel it's because we have a lot of trees that are 5 to 15 years old. They're good, healthy trees generally that are out in full sunlight. And the females will kind of choose those trees as healthy trees that they can get to, they can fly to and lay their eggs. And again, remember the predators are being satiated by all that they're eating. A lot of these are left to mate in these areas. And so there's some broods that have gone extinct, but now that we have mostly secondary forest in the United States, eastern US, Magic cicada seems to be doing just fine. And so again, I wanted to include this graphic here of the virgin forest in 1620 and 400 years later. We know there's one little 300-acre patch of virgin forest in Nashville. By the way, this is E. Lucy Braun, who wrote the book on eastern deciduous forest, standing by one of those massive old growth trees. It is said that people could ride at full gallop on horseback through an old growth forest. I've never been in one on horseback to see if that's possible today, but you know it wouldn't be in a secondary growth forest because of all the undergrowth, right? So the cicadas, the periodical cicadas, apparently did very well during that period of time when we were heavily forested. Okay, another couple things. When we have this natural occurrence, a native species emerges, there's some disruption that can take place because it's going to affect food webs, food chains, especially in the forest. The birds are going to feed on this instead of caterpillars. So there's going to be more moths and butterflies in those areas that will be, especially those caterpillars are those that are going to feed on the leaves of trees in those areas, at least for that season. And even the migratory birds that come in that opportunistically feed on the cicadas here, if they're headed further north, they're going to carry that cicada energy with them, aren't they, to where they're going. And so it's an interesting phenomenon. It is natural because, of course, these are native species here in the eastern United States. I just have some resources here. I wanted to make sure you were available or knew about. Dr. Kritsky's book has been in print for a while about periodical cicadas. It's called The Plague and the Puzzle. Each year there's a big brood that emerges, like these two that are co-emerging in Illinois. He puts out a book, so this is a brand new book on the double emergence. And then here's one that's about people who trout fish. It's kind of interesting because the trout and all the other fish will get their fill of these things. But at first, if you can tie a fly that looks like one of these guys, you can catch a lot of trout, I'm sure. Okay, there are neat children's books. This one has been republished in recent years that are fun to, I think today happens to be Read to a Child Day, if I heard that on the radio this morning, right? And this is one of my favorites called When the Wood Hums. It may be somewhat out of print. You might be able to get it today. It tells the story of a young girl and her father. And 17 years later, when her father is absent, and he's passed away, but she still has the memories, you see. So it's a good book. Now I've told you all about it. I've revealed it, I guess. But anyway, we can see then some number of resources. I really want to heavily indicate or encourage you to try Cicada Safari and be a citizen scientist there. There's a slide coming up about that. These are just all good sites. Here's my recipe site if you want to try it. And then this is what your smartphone would look like if you are on, say, Cicada Safari. I'm going to use this app myself. To document this, you have to take a picture and maybe a little video to record what it sounds like and submit it. And we can get a really good picture of where the cicadas are and when they're emerging. And then there's this great memorabilia. I have this ceramic cicada that an old friend of mine made from grad school from years ago out of clay. You can get periodical cicada earrings that you can wear. And Joanna really likes this. Joanna Brachado likes the cicada action figures. That's the first I've seen of those. So again, I've about taken our whole hour up here, but I'll take any questions that you have at this point. Go ahead and get out of the presenter view here and see if people have questions from the chat or however you want to handle that.
Well, there are a lot of comments. Those are beautiful. Wow. Is this emergence more in Middle Tennessee than East? Is one question.
That's a good point. I think if I remember right, I'm gonna have to check my article here in the magazine about that one, because I think I included some of the counties, unless my mind is just playing tricks on me about that. Let's see. I don't know if I actually did or not. I think it does occur to some extent over in East Tennessee too, but it's always been amazing to me that it's in so many other states. And like a good part of Missouri, for example, and in the northern Gulf states, we see it. It kind of extends up into Middle Tennessee from those northern Gulf states. So East Tennessee would not see as many of them. If we go, there's a periodical or circular at the University of Tennessee Extension website that has a map of the state. And if I probably should have included that in this presentation so that you would be able to see the counties from 2011 where they were recorded. But I know that the one that will emerge, the 17-year brood that will emerge next year in 2025, everybody in East Tennessee will see that one.
Jamie Newman says, I'm going to go snapping my fingers through the woods in Cookville with a ton of males following me.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun. And if David Attenborough can do it, you can too. You don't have to be knighted by the Queen to do that, do you?
Laura Quirk says, thank you for this talk. I have been scared of these guys since I was a kid. I never knew they didn't bite or sting.
Right. And I see that Joe Brachetto has shared the website at UTIA. That's good in the chat. You can, folks can take advantage of that and see what the map was. And I see this sometimes too when kids are really young and their parents are kind of afraid of the cicadas too, and they'll carry them out of the house. They'll throw a blanket over the kid to protect them from the cicadas, and all that's going to do is
Scare them.
a phobia of insects, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as an entomologist, I have to admit when I see people in a cicada emergence and they're walking into a big store like Walmart with the doors open and they're coming from an area, oftentimes they'll have cicadas on their shoulders and they don't know it. And I just get a kick out of that, when I see when I see that going on. But I don't like to make fun of them. But insect phobia it's a very pronounced fear, and we do have to be
Yes.
very careful. Okay, Kim says the little feet are scratchy, and they will when you hold one. I've never had one try to probe me with their proboscis. They will probe um, new growth for fluids though, and won't hurt the trees, but they will. That's where they get that fluid that they excrete at you when you get out there.
Uh,
See. Uh,
Lori Bruno asks, should I plant my native tree saplings that I just received?
well, that's a good question. If they're young
Mhm.
saplings like that, if they're natives, I would say that the native trees that have already got a good start that have been out there for a couple of years will be fine. But these new ones, if you could hold off um, before you plant them, it might be a good idea. And we could check with some other horticulture people on that. But uh, I know that some of the nurseries over around McMinnville and such, I think they get the word these things are coming out, and they'll hold off on what they're going to start growing on some of the saplings and such until after the cicada year, until after the emergence. But the natives do better than the non-native woody plants.
John has asked, has the cicada population increased or decreased as related to size of old growth forests?
I think it's kind of hard to get a handle on it because you know very few people had records of that from the Pilgrim times forward. But we think that they're pretty adaptable, even though we've lost a lot of trees in forested areas. They have adapted pretty well to urban, suburban areas where the females find these younger trees that we've set out in our landscapes. And so there's some evidence out there that some of the three species prefer one tree species over another, tridecim versus tridecassini and tridecula. So there's some research on that that's published. But I would think that, I get more worried about us losing monarch butterflies than I do the cicadas, periodical cicadas. I think they'll always be with us as long as we have trees and we don't put too many pesticides on our lawns and this sort of thing.
Ann Valentine asks, thank you. This was great. If I'm east of Nashville on May 3rd, around Cedars of Lebanon, will they be there?
May 3rd, it might be a little early for them. It all depends on how the soil warms up and the rain schedule and that sort of thing. They will make some little, I didn't mention it on the calendar, but they sometimes, if the soil's moist, they'll make these little tunnels. And if you pull up a rock or a brick in your landscape or a flower pot just sitting there on the ground, you'll probably see some of the nymphs that have gotten up underneath it, ready to emerge and crawl up something vertical. Doesn't have to be a tree, they'll crawl up anything to emerge as teneral adults.
John Norris asks, why are the cycles in prime numbers and why not 11 or 19 years?
That's a very good question. That might be a Gene Kritzky question right there. I might have to ask him that one. That they are certainly primes, aren't they? And those dog day cicadas, I've heard different things about them, either 2 or 5 year cycles or 4 or 7 year cycles. And I don't know which is correct. Both of them are out there if you research it a little bit. But again, we know, and I mentioned Thomas Jefferson, and of course, that double emergence in central Illinois. It's been 221 years since that happened there, where those two broods are together. And that was when Thomas Jefferson was president, by the way, when that happened, you see.
Jerry Thornton has his hand up. Jerry, would you like to pose your question? You'll have to
Yeah,
unmute. Go ahead.
yes, there may be several people that heard what I heard part of today, and I'm very curious about. I heard part of a report on NPR about some scientists out trying to collect the pee from cicadas. It had something to do with the space program. I did not understand what this was all about, but they were all excited that they finally found a bunch of cicadas on low branches, and the cicadas all squirted their pee at them very violently. And did anybody else hear that? What was that all about?
Well, that's interesting. If it's periodical cicadas, it would have been from another year. And it's too early for the dog day cicadas this year.
These were tropical cicadas
Oh,
that they,
tropical. Okay.
yeah. But it
Okay.
had something to do with the space program, and I didn't hear enough of the report to know what
How about that? That's
peeing
news.
cicadas have to do with space.
Well, they've taken a number of arthropods up in the space shuttle and other things to do, and even spiders to see if they can still weave a web and things like that before. But this is news to me on this, and it looks like Joe Brachetto has added that the NPR story. I'll be interested to look at that one myself. I imagine there's something that they're extracting from the plants they're feeding on, something that's in the sap that they process as it goes through their digestive tract. They are fluid feeders, and that forms some kind of a molecule. It's just hard to say. I'd have to look at it and see what their goal is. But again, most people aren't going to enjoy it if a squirrel runs up a tree trunk and they spray you, as you're out there observing them here in Tennessee, this Middle Tennessee, especially this early summer, late spring, early summer.
Joe has written out that the NPR story, which she has the big long link to, it turns out that cicadas pee in jets, and why and how they do it could help scientists better understand microfluidics and advance all kinds of technologies.
Okay, so microfluidics is in the realm of physics, isn't it? Okay, interesting. Well, they can squirt pretty good. In that same order are these little plant hoppers that we call sharpshooters. Have you ever heard of sharpshooters? They'll get on your roses, and if you irritate them a little bit, they'll turn around and they'll shoot in your direction. Some of that same stuff. So they ought to be studying the sharpshooters too, I guess, as well as the cicadas that do it.
All right. If anyone else has questions, I'd suggest unmute yourself, raise your hand, or just ask the question. Excuse me. I know there's a few comments here. This was also interesting. Thank you. Very cool. Thanks. That was terrific. So I think you've answered a lot of questions for people who are concerned.
I hope they're good answers, and
living with myths.
We're always learning about these cicadas.
Yes, sounds like it. We're gonna be excited checking on the birds and seeing how quickly they get they get satisfied and stop coming to the feeders.
I know.
We'll watch and see if that happens.
One year when we had this West Tennessee brood of 13-year cicadas, I went over there and I collected a bunch of cicadas, and I came back to my home in Murfreesboro, and I had them out in a container, just in a tray, and they weren't flying or anything; they're still alive. But it was kind of odd, hearing these cicadas call in a place that it wouldn't ordinarily be, and then I turned around and my dog had eaten half of them. So
You're fussing at you.
Your dogs, and I saw some research or a newspaper article where they'd interviewed a veterinarian in 2011, saying, the veterinarian says, as long as the dogs don't eat them in excess, they're not going to get sick or anything. In other words, consuming them is not
harmful.
Is not that dangerous to
I have
a dog.
I'm gonna bust in with a cicada and dog story.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ann.
my little fluffy mutt had a cicada in the backyard, and it is I'm really pretty good with insects generally, but cicadas when they're in my face, I'm not very okay with them. And she had this thing, and it was rattling all over the place. And I was, I know that it's okay if the dog eats it. So it was one of those occasions. That's her barking right now. I just had to go inside. And I left her with it.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that story. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people outdoor with their pets that will experience something very similar to that.
Yes, they will. Yep. Well, thank you. It was great. Thank you. Very interesting, very enjoyable presentation. I've had a lot of my questions about this subject answered. This was so fun. Thank you, Steve.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I see
Great presentation.
somebody asked if they're high fiber or not. I don't really think so. I think they're more the females have more in them to consume, and there's some fats and some proteins and maybe a few carbs too. I don't know, but apparently that is going to be something we'll try out. Some people will try that out.
All right. Well,
When you go to that link, you'll see some of the recipes. They're kind of fun sounding, and they're not very high end like gourmet. They're easy to make, I think, if you wanted to try.
when push comes to shove, you can always dip them in chocolate.
There you go, like the chocolate covered ants, right?
Nice crunchy snack.
Or the cricket cricket on a stick in a lollipop. Yeah, you can get those.
Well, this has been fun, Steve. We really appreciate it. And for those who missed the announcement earlier, yes, it's recorded. Yes, it will be posted on the seminars page of the Tennessee Native Plant Society website, tnps.org. And it should be there certainly by the end of the week. Any more questions before we say goodnight? I see one hand. I don't know, see a face or a name, but go ahead and unmute and ask. Number 447-560, whoever that is.
I think was that Jerry?
I don't
Well,
know.
it is now. Are you a Murphree of Murfreesboro? I mean, is your name associated with the town name?
No. My name is spelled a little differently. It's Murphree. And I know some of those Murphrees, and it's confusing to people because I live in Murfreesboro, but my Murphrees are pre-Revolutionary War, but came into North and South, what is now North and South Carolina, and then migrated over to Tennessee.
Okay. One last call for questions. Okay. Well, in that case, I'm going to say thank you very much. We certainly enjoyed this. I know I did. And David was next to me listening the whole time. I don't know if he faded in and out or not, but he was
I'm glad
here.
you got to see it too. And it's been good to be with you all tonight and see some folks I know, hear from you, and let's all have a great experience as we get into early May and through the month of May into early June.